Welcome to Satay,
Okay.
a podcast about the foods that have shaped Malaysia. I'm Dr. Noby Leong, scientist, food writer, and broadcaster.
And I'm GIbson, photographer and grill master.
And in this series, we explore the history, cultures, and cuisines of Malaysia. In today's episode, we take a look at satay and the myth of Malaysian cuisine. So grab a seat and join us for Satay.
Okay.
It's episode 1.
Indeed. Here we No, hang on. Can you bleep that out?
I'm really excited to kick off this series, Philip. Satay, okay.
Okay, indeed.
All about Malaysian food and by extension, its history and culture. And we're going to be looking at the stories behind Malaysia's most iconic foods. So think about our namesake, satay, think durian, belacan, sambal, laksa, kueh, all of those foods that are famous across Malaysia and also Southeast Asia and the world.
Sure.
But they're more than just food. Behind each of them is a story of love, of war, relationships, money, greed, piracy, sultans.
Yeah, I think doing all of the research for this show, I was amazed by, well, we do go into a great deal of depth. You are going to come out of this with honorary degrees in Malaysian history, I think. But it's exciting though. There's going to be a lot of Game of Thrones analogies.
Cite us in your future PhD, please.
That'd be great.
So food is really a gateway into the past. And whether you're new to Malaysian food or whether you're a bona fide Malaysian chef, this is the series for you. In every episode, we're going to take a look at one food, and that becomes our symbol that connects us with the past and the people today. We'll explore why that food is important, where and when in history it comes from, and its significance today. But it's not just us talking. We'll also be hearing from some amazing guests, food writers, cultural custodians, chefs, who will all share their insights on the food history and culture of today. But before we get into this episode, we should probably do some introductions.
Sure. Who am I? Yeah.
Who are we?
I mean, I guess this whole podcast came about as a bit of an identity crisis for you. So, who are you, Noby Leong?
Okay, so if I have to give my lore,
okay,
I am a Malaysian-born, Australian-raised,
sure,
but now Scottish resident.
Farm to table.
It's a very long distance to get from that particular farm to this particular table.
The carbon footprint is immense.
So large. I began my career as a scientist, actually. So I've got a PhD in chemistry. And what I loved most about chemistry was that the best analogy for chemistry is food.
Sure.
Because the kitchen is basically just like the lab, and it's that classic joke of just don't lick the spoon.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I guess you're following recipes when you're making stuff, aren't you? Or you're developing recipes, I guess.
Yeah.
If you're discovering something.
Yeah, they're very, very similar. But after being a research scientist for 5 years, I became a science communicator and also now a food writer. So I've done lots of different things in media, whether that be broadcast media, YouTube, etc., etc. So I really love talking about science and food, really. And who are you, Philip?
Who am I? I am GIbson. I'm a photographer. I'm from Scotland. I first met Noby just over 10 years ago. I went out to Australia in 2015, where I met Noby's family and was lucky enough to be welcomed into the family and eat at their dinner table every weekend. Over the course of the 4 years that I lived in Australia, Noby's mum would cook a whole host of meals, probably more often than not Malaysian dishes. And so as a Scottish person getting introduced to this nyonya curry, which for those that don't know, it's
like chicken and potatoes in a curry gravy.
Sure, thanks Noby. But it's served with rice. And so I was like, double carb, what is this? Because, growing up in my house where, we ate fairly ordinary food, but it was never so radical to have 2 types of carbohydrate in a
You're
meal.
from the country that does a crisp sandwich.
Oh, right, yeah. Okay. I stand corrected. Sure, but maybe not 2 hot carbs. I don't know. Anyway, yeah, that was great. But among that, so many other kinds of dishes. But I've been lucky enough to go over to Malaysia a couple of times now and eat the food in the country where it comes from, and that has been an exceptional experience in its own right. So working with Noby on this project, Noby's been doing the interviews and been showing me around, and I've been doing my best to photograph them. So along with this podcast, there will be plenty of photographic imagery to go along with it to kind of visualize all of the stuff we're talking about.
And they'll be on our socials at Satay OK as well as our website. So I guess I'm providing that more family heritage viewpoint for this podcast. And Philip, you've got that documentary eye.
Sure, thank you for not saying colonial. Yeah, it's I just think it's important that we're telling the story through spoken word and all of the rest of it, but I think it's a helpful record as well to photograph a country that is rapidly developing. It's changing. What we, I think, learned when we're over there is that we're kind of on the brink. A lot of people who are still alive today were around during Malaysia's independence from Britain in the early 60s. And over their lifetime, that country has completely transformed.
And I'm really, really excited to share those stories. So the reason why we are making this podcast and why we're doing this deep dive into Malaysian food, culture, and history is basically because product of grief. So I'm going to very, very quickly trauma dump on our guest, Philip, and I hope they don't mind.
You've waited about 5 minutes. I think that's pretty good going.
Yeah, that's pretty not bad. So a few years ago, my mother died. We were very close to each other, and food was always a really big part of our relationship. And so after she died, I was super desperate to hang on to her memory, and so I just started cooking a lot. I cooked all the dishes that I could remember. I was asking my siblings about foods that they remembered. I was writing down all these recipes. And then I had this realization that I actually had no idea where the food came from. I kind of knew about my own family's traditions, but I didn't really know how they fit into the broader Malaysian culture. So my family are Chinese Malaysian, and we've also got what we call Nyonya heritage, and we'll explore that in this series. But beyond that, it was like, well, what am I? So that triggered an identity crisis, and I wanted to know more about my family, where we come from, what Malaysia is, its history, the many different cultures, because I just didn't know any of it. As I said, I grew up in Australia. My education was not Malaysian.
Right.
And so I felt like I had a huge amount of information to learn about where I came from.
Yeah, I would say at this point you have managed to buy probably just about every single Malaysian book ever published.
I own quite a few. It's quite the library of history books, of cookbooks, everything that I could get my hand on. And what I actually realized is that I wanted to kind of like consume Malaysian media in a really digestible way, but that also told that complete history of Malaysia and its people.
Right.
I wanted something fun, but quite in-depth.
Right, okay.
And so that's what I'm hoping this podcast gives people.
And if you're listening to this, I hope you want that too.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So this podcast is the product of years of investigation to cure my identity crisis, and it's basically a product of grief. So very happy days, Philip.
Yeah, it is. I would like to add that we had lots of fun making this, so it's not all doom and gloom. So yeah.
And I hope that's evident when you hear the fantastic interviews that we've got lined up for you.
Yeah, no, they really are exceptional.
So let's get into this episode. And today I want to lay the groundwork for this season, and what better way to lay the groundwork with one of my favorite foods, satay. And I kind of think it's most people's first encounter with Malaysian food, whether they know it or not. First, Philip, though, I need to kind of get something off my chest because it infuriates me to no end. When anyone refers to satay, I am talking about meat on a stick. I am not talking about peanut sauce.
Okay.
Satay is the stick. Satay sauce is a completely different thing that is not intrinsic to what satay is.
So you're talking about when you go into a gastropub and you see what basically is like a chicken curry effectively, but they're not saying that it's a korma, they're saying it's a chicken satay curry or something like that.
Yeah.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So it's...
If there are no sticks involved, it is not satay.
Right, it's chicken and a peanut sauce. Okay, yeah, that's... some might think of that as pedantic, but I think you're well within your right.
I think we've all got our food battles we're willing to fight on, and satay is mine.
Well, we have called the podcast Satay, okay.
Exactly. You know, like some people, they can't stand it when they say chai tea.
Oh, right, because it's just TT.
Or naan bread. I cannot stand satay being synonymous with just peanuts.
Well, leave us a comment if you agree, or what your food peeves are.
Indeed. So there are many different versions of satay that can be found around Malaysia. You've got your classic chicken or beef, but there are also Chinese versions, which are pork pieces, but also the offal. You can serve it with peanut sauce tinged with star fruit, or you actually don't need to serve it with peanut sauce at all. It's not necessarily served like that all the time. And in Malacca, which is where I was born, there's also a version called satay chalup, which is kind of like a cross between satay and Chinese hot pot, where you get this like cauldron of boiling sauce in the center of the table, and then you dip your satay sticks into it.
Is that sauce peanut sauce?
I've actually never had satay chalup because my family really is fundamentally against it. I think they see this like cauldron of sauce in the middle of a public restaurant as like unhygienic, and they're like, I don't know how long that sauce been sitting there for. I don't want to eat that. So we never eat it.
I mean, you get like master stocks in certain places, which, you know, is supposed to be the whole point, like the mother sauce or whatever. But yeah, I get that. I also think this is a bit of an unraveling of how opinionated Malaysians are about food and how they want to eat it.
We are so opinionated. We have very, very specific taste buds, and it's hard to get that across to people unless you actually visit Malaysia and start talking to locals.
Sure.
Like they will be like, oh, I don't like Penang's version because of this very subtle difference that's imperceptible to a non-Malaysian.
Yeah, I think we should get across the point that Malaysians, certainly to me anyway, are the most opinionated people when it comes to food.
Yeah, I think it's something that you notice when I'm talking with other Malaysians or some Malaysian friends. We'll just sit at the dining table talking about, I don't know, dal and the very many different variations, why we do or don't like them.
Right. It's wild. I think I've never met probably a group of people from a place in the world that are so outspoken and yeah, particular and pedantic about how they expect their food to be served, to the point that, you know, when a waiter or waitress or whatever comes over to your table and says, oh, is everything okay with the food?
Yeah.
Malaysians are definitely going to tell them what's wrong with it.
Yeah, we're pretty opinionated.
Too salty, too sweet, doesn't have enough of this. Oh, why have you cooked like that? Oh, this is burnt. You need to send this back. No, you try this. Do you try it? Are you proud to serve this? I've witnessed these exchanges happening in Malaysian restaurants, and I sat there clutching my pearls going like, oh, I'm so British. I'm supposed to just say, yes, everything's fine. And just, you know, kind of dismiss them immediately because you don't want any attention on you. So it's culturally just a very different thing.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of why we're doing this podcast where food is our gateway.
Right.
Because so many Malaysians and Southeast Asians and Asians in general are so obsessed with food that becomes the perfect conduit to learn about our culture.
Right.
So when it comes to satay and where it actually came from, there's lots of different theories of how it got to Malaysia.
Okay.
One of them is that satay is based on Middle Eastern kebabs. And people think that they were introduced to India through historical trading, because those regions are next to each other. And then Indians brought it over to Malaysia through historic maritime trade.
Okay.
Another possibility is that satay comes from Cambodia. So there's a frieze at the Bayon Temple in Cambodia. And so there's this stone relief, and you can look this up online, where it looks like two people grilling satays over flames.
Right.
And it's amazing that this is immortalized in a temple. Someone carved this in stone. And so the possibility is that it originated in Cambodia and then made its way south to Malaysia from there.
Sure.
And then the other possibility is that Malaysians themselves invented it, because what is more primal than meat on a stick?
Sure, right. Yeah. I would imagine that, you know, meat on a stick is one of those things that most probably, wherever humans have gone, they've probably put meat on a stick.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
The thing about satay, though, even though it's this quintessentially Malaysian food, it's also quintessentially Singaporean.
Right.
It's also quintessentially Indonesian, and it's kind of quintessentially Southeast Asian in general.
Okay.
And so when we start to unpick iconic dishes like satay, it kind of makes you ask yourself, what even is Malaysian food?
Okay, yeah.
And when I asked myself that question, I realized that most of what I'd learned from my family or from the media was just a really small slither of insight into the kind of total, complex, broad history and culture of the country.
Sure.
And that's what the series is all about. Now, I want to lay some groundwork because I think everyone's got different levels of understanding of Malaysia. There are some people like me, and so they've got a strong understanding. There are some people that are totally new. And I realized just how obscure Malaysia is as a country when I first moved to Scotland. This was like 5-6 years ago, and I would tell people, oh, you know, I was born in Malaysia, and it's like time froze. I could hear people's brains go into overdrive because they were trying to figure out where Malaysia is on a map.
Yeah, trying not to look ignorant.
Yeah. And so I kind of didn't know what was happening for the first few times that this happened, but then I realized that, oh, I'm from an obscure country. And I never really realized that because in Australia,
You're closer, and
closer.
There's more Malaysians.
yeah, there's Malaysian celebrities, there's Singaporean celebrities, and Malaysian food culture is really embedded in Australia as well.
Right.
But obviously that's not the case everywhere. So let's kick things off by looking at 3 common misconceptions about Malaysia. And hopefully that'll give us, all of us, the same groundwork to start from. So, Philip, misconception number 1, Malaysia is a peninsula.
Well, half of it is.
Half of it is, but not totally. So, in this series, we're going to use a lot of maps.
Yes, indeed. I think it's definitely advisable that our listeners do try to get near a computer and get on Google Maps or something like that, because we are going to be jumping around not just Malaysia, but also a lot of its neighbouring countries.
Indeed, yeah. And so Malaysia, though, has 2 parts. We have the peninsula. That's where the capital city of Kuala Lumpur is. That's where some of the really historically important cities like Penang and Malacca are.
Right.
But there's also this other half, which is on Borneo.
Right.
So Borneo is not a country.
Yeah, I think that's something that most people, maybe in the UK, if they have if they've heard of Borneo, they just assume that it is an island state in its own right,
Full of monkeys.
full of orangutans.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where David Attenborough is
Lives.
constantly going. For to just go and see these massive caves and huge limestone kind of peaks and stuff like that.
Yeah. So Borneo is an island. It's east of the Malay Peninsula.
Right.
The southern 2/3 are part of Indonesia. Most of the top third is part of Malaysia. And then there's this small little bit of the north that's part of Brunei. Well, not part of, it is Brunei.
Sure.
So 3 countries form Borneo. So Malaysia has an east part and a west part. The Borneo part and the peninsula part.
And in this season, we will be exploring only the peninsula. There is a lot to tell about Borneo, and I think we will give our listeners a breather after the first 10 episodes of this season to digest what we have explained to them, and then we will give Borneo a chance to sing in season 2.
How those 2 parts came together to form a country is very fascinating, and as you'll see throughout this series, it's messy. And a lot to do with some interfering colonialists.
Yes.
Misconception number 2. Someone from Malaysia is called Malay. So, I am mistaken for being Malay all the time, even though I have never introduced myself as Malay. People will just automatically assume that I'm Malay, but that's not the case.
No.
So Malay is an ethnicity and it's a culture, but it's not a nationality. Someone from Malaysia, the general term is Malaysian.
Right.
So I am Chinese Malaysian because my heritage is Chinese.
Right.
There are Singaporean Malays, there are Indonesian Malays, also Thai Malays, probably in the Philippines as well.
Sure.
So
It's a large ethnic group. Yeah.
yeah, really large. And I think it's important to specify this because Malaysia has so many different cultures. So if you were to read any bit of media, most of them will say that Malaysia is a melting pot of Malay, Chinese, and Indians.
Sure.
Not incorrect, but definitely gives a false impression of the country.
Right.
So you have those 3 major groups, but you also have indigenous people.
Yeah, which make up more than 10% of the population.
You've got the Orang Aslis on the Malay Peninsula, you've got Dayaks and Sarawak, and a range of dozens and dozens of different indigenous groups. You've also got Eurasians, you've got what we call Peranicans, the list goes on. And all of these cultures are very distinct from each other, and often they're very, very old. Like they've been in Malaysia for quite some time. These aren't new migrant groups per se. All of these groups have been here before independence. And some of these have been around for thousands and thousands of years. The final misconception is Malaysian cuisine is the best in the world.
Okay, who's saying that?
Well, I am.
Right.
People are.
Okay.
The internet. And I am not disagreeing that the food of Malaysia is excellent.
Sure.
Because, I mean, I am obviously biased and I eat every day, so I think it's friggin' phenomenal.
Sure.
But The misconception isn't that it's the best in the world, it's that there's such a thing as Malaysian cuisine.
Right.
And just like satay, I will fight to the death anyone because I do not believe there's such a thing as Malaysian cuisine. So Malaysia itself has only existed since 1963.
Sure.
The whole concept, the nation is very, very, very new. And if we think about the definition of a cuisine, I think there needs to be some sort of unifying food culture that's generally practiced by most of the country.
Right.
And while there are definitely certain dishes and flavor profiles that all Malaysians enjoy, the way that Malaysians themselves categorize the food is very distinct. We never, in our own country, would say, oh, this is a Malaysian dish. We only really do that to outsiders.
Right, okay.
I only really talk about Malaysian food, quote unquote, when I'm in like a Western country.
Right, so you're spreading a false gospel here then?
I necessarily, in some ways, out of convenience.
Okay.
But I really try not to say Malaysian cuisine. So what we do though have are many different cultural groups with their own cuisine.
Right.
So we've got Malay cuisine, Chinese cuisine, Indian cuisine, and there are overlaps between those, but they're very, very distinct from each other. And I want to say that if you're ever in Malaysia and you do come across a restaurant that says they specialize in authentic Malaysian food or whatever, that is a red flag. That restaurant is targeted specifically to tourists.
Sure, okay. You want to be looking for certain signage above the restaurant. Is it?
Yeah, like if you're in Malaysia, restaurants will promote themselves either by the dish that they specialize in, like a laksa restaurant, or by the culture, like a Chinese Peranakan restaurant, for instance. Just to kind of give people an idea of some of these differences, so like Malay, this is a cuisine that is heavily, heavily influenced by Islam. Everything that Malays eat must be halal.
Sure.
So you have a lot of like rice-based dishes, lots of curries and stews. Chicken and beef are the main meats, but you won't see any pork.
Sure.
Versus Chinese people, we freaking love pork. I love pork. And yeah, we have rice too, but we also have noodles and a lot of soybean products like soy sauce, tofu, things like that. And then for Indian food, that's dominated by Hindu religion. So you're not going to have beef,
Right.
but you're going to have lamb.
Right.
And you also have a lot of breads that form the basis of Indian food. So there's just sort of some of the distinctions. And I think what's interesting about Malaysia is that even though these cultures have coexisted for hundreds of years, they have actually managed to remain pretty distinct. Do you remember what your first impressions of Malaysian food are? Whether or not you thought it was cuisine, whether or not you had any impression of what the dishes were or the flavors were?
I think I'm probably a good person to ask from the point of view that I would also be one of those people whose brain would have been ticking over going, where is Malaysia? So yeah, I mean, satay maybe, but I don't know that I would have necessarily assumed that that was Malaysian. I think much as you've said, I would have just kind of said, oh, that's an East Asian dish, like Southeast Asian dish or whatever. But it's kind of like a kebab, you know, probably what I would have thought. It was only really, I think, when I got to Australia, as I say, and sat at your family dining table and had the nyonya curry, for example, that I was like, oh, okay, right, this is curry, so it's Indian to me, but then I'm eating it in a Chinese woman's house. So, yeah,
because Indian curries are different to a Malay curry, different to a nyonya curry.
Yeah, I'm not expert enough to tell you how. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's a reddy brown color. It's got a lot of those sorts of kind of same spices from turmeric and cumin and coriander and things like that through it. But I don't know what makes it nyonya versus what would be what over in the UK, which of course we're a curry loving nation, what we assume is an Indian curry.
So I'll give you a very brief understanding of what I think are the differences between a Malay and nyonya curry versus an Indian curry.
Okay.
One is the types of spices used. And I think Indian curries lean into earthier spices like your turmeric, cumin, coriander.
Right.
But I think Malay and nyonya curries lean more into floral spices like lemongrass, galangal, that sort of thing.
Okay.
So two very distinct flavor profiles. There's also a big difference in how they're cooked. So Indian curries, I think they lean more towards using whole spices and spice powders.
Right.
But I think for Malay and nyonya, you're more likely to see spice pastes being used.
Okay.
and that can change the whole texture or experience of the dish.
It was only, I think, when I got over to Malaysia actually and was eating Malay food properly was that I was kind of caught off guard by how spicy it is.
So spicy.
There's a lot of chilies used in a lot
Yeah.
of these spice pastes that you're talking about.
Okay, so as we see, the food of Malaysia, or you can say Malaysia's cuisines, plural, emphasizing the z,
Sure.
that's so complex. And we wanted to delve deeper into what this food is, so we spoke to a true matriarch of Malaysian food. Now this woman, she is older than Malaysia itself. So remember, Malaysia got independence in 1963. She's older than that. She is a cultural custodian of the cuisines of Malaysia. She's written multiple cookbooks, and she recently took home a Gourmand Award in 2025, which is sort of the Oscars of food. Her name is Kalsom Taib, and one of my favorite books of hers is Malaysia's Culinary Heritage. This book features more than 200 traditional recipes that have been enshrined in the National Heritage Act of 2005. So if there's anybody that's going to be able to tell us about Malaysian food, how important it is, what it means, and what it is, it's Kalsom Taib. We met at her house in Kuala Lumpur, and I'm so excited to share this interview with you about what Malaysian food is from a true culinary custodian.
My name is Kalsom Taib. I'm very old already. I was born in Muar, a small little town in Johor, in August 1942 during the Japanese occupation, well before you were born, yeah?
Kalsom Taib is affectionately known as Auntie Chom, and I kickstarted things by asking her, what is Malaysian food?
Well, I would say it is a diverse food. You can get influences from all culture. It depends what you want to eat. Many people think Malaysian food is just Malay food. They think it is pedas, spicy. They think it is not halal, whereas it is not. You see, it can fit all palates, especially if you go to the street stalls, the hawker stalls, the satays, grilling, you have the nasi ayam, chicken rice, you can have the Kelantan food, nasi ulam, nasi dagang, laksam, yeah? And yet you can have chicken chop, and you have different types of laksa all over the world, from all corners of the world that you can have in Malaysia.
So Malaysian food is many things, and in some ways defies classification. But before getting into the nitty-gritty, I asked Kalsom about growing up in Malaysia and the role of food in her life.
I received my education at several schools in Johor, Malacca and Kuala Lumpur, as my father was a civil servant and he was posted to all over the places. Yeah, I graduated with a BA Honours in History and a Diploma in Education from the University of Malaya. I started my career as a teacher because those days I was bonded. We cannot get any other scholarships except as teaching scholarship. So I had to work for 5 years as a teacher and was posted to several places. But after 5 years, I left and decided to enter the private sector.
Though she worked in the private sector, food was always important to her.
I come from a family of cooks. My great-grandfather had the title connoisseur of food. And he had Indian chefs, Turkish chefs, Malay chefs, Chinese chefs. So then my grandmother, his daughter, was also a cook, inherited from him. So with that, naturally my mother was also a cook. And she had a recipe, handwritten recipe, of all the recipes she had collected over the years from her grandmother. So naturally, I ate all this good food that sometimes you never hear, normal people don't hear, because my family came from the first Masjid Besar of Johor, who used to travel with the Sultan, and also cooks. He had a big kitchen, in his house at Bukit Senyum. And then we grew up with that food. So of course my taste buds have got this. I called it, my taste bud is very naughty. It knows, it wants to taste good food all the time.
While cooking was always a big feature of her life, she didn't start writing cookbooks until much later.
I retired in December 1997, travelled a bit, then decided what I wanted to do. I was not the type to sit still, so I decided to write. I'm an armchair cook. I don't really cook. So I roped in my cousin, Hamidah Abdul Hamid, who is an excellent writer. She's pretty, married young, started cooking at an early age of 20, you know. So she was trained by her mother, her grandmother. So together, we decided to partner and do Johor palette. You need two hands to clap, right hand, left hand, and together we could make beautiful music together.
Kalsom's passion comes from a motivation to preserve her culture. And she gave me an example of this passion by recounting a story about a snack food called kuih.
And I wanted to preserve. Let me tell you an example. My paternal grandmother was an excellent cook. She makes the best kuih, called kuih kepal. It's a traditional kuih inherited from the Bugis. My grandfather was Bugis, my grandmother was Javanese. So she makes the best kuih kepal, which is a Bugis kuih, And it was my father's favorite. Every time my father comes, she will bake it ready, put it in the cream cracker, empty tin, hide it under the bed for my father to come. When I wanted to do Johor palette, I didn't have the recipe, and I was stressed out. I said, where can? So I went through Johor together with my partner Hamidah to find who could cook this kuih kepal, and we found her. That taught me a lesson. If I don't preserve these recipes, then it will be gone forever for the next generation. Not to say you're going to cook, but at least you have it in the book for preservation, for future generations to come. So I wanted to preserve the recipes for the present generation and future generations to come.
Aside from being important to her from a personal standpoint, Kalsom Taib talks about the importance of food to our understanding of Malaysia as a whole.
You see, from the food, you go back to the past. How did this food come to be? Like botok-botok is also a traditional dish, gazetted. It is fish smothered with ulam, all types of ulam, and also with gravy, fish paste, and then it is steamed. That's not Malay, that is Javanese. It's Javanese. And they cook it because they have a lot of ulam grown, they have lots of banana trees. So when they came, a lot of them came. The Javanese came to workers in Johor especially, so they brought in their food. So then some of them married Malays, so they introduced the food. We inherited it, modified it. So we go back to the past, to the history. That the British were here, the Portuguese were here, the Dutch were here, Ristafel, the curries, the tiffin from the Dutch heritage food. So food is the one that will tell you from this. From here, I can tell you the history of the past.
And that is Kalsom Taib. So clear from her how important food is. And in terms of Malaysia, in her own words, I guess she's saying that Malaysian food, Malaysia's cuisines, they're kind of everything. It's multifaceted, it's a product of so many different influences, and there's so many different flavor profiles that can be found within this one country.
Yeah, and she also referred to a great deal of other kind of ethnic groups that have contributed to this. She's talking about Bugis, Javanese, kind of, which are from kind of neighbouring Indonesia and those islands around the peninsula of Malaysia. It does kind of go to show that whole melting pot.
And I think what I loved most about listening to her is her passion, and it's clear that food is important to her, not just from that family point of view, but from that historical point of view as well. She is a history teacher, but now also a food writer, and she's married those two worlds together. And she can see how important it is to preserve our food cultures because they kind of tell us who we are and where we came from.
Sure. I mean, yeah, with her background in history, for definitely. It's she spoke so enthusiastically and passionately about it. We were at her house for what, about 4 or 5 hours or something? And we could have spent days there just listening to her talk and these anecdotes and these stories of her life, basically utterly fascinating. And we'll hear more from her in a later episode.
Yeah, indeed. And I think what was perhaps also really great about Kalsom Taib is that she just hasn't stopped in life.
Yeah, this was her first podcast recording, and her producer was at the house when we were there, who's helping her do all of this, Instagram reels and TikToks and stuff like that.
YouTube.
Again, to remind you, she's 82, 83, and just still going for it. It's still just spreading the gospel, I think, for want of a better way of putting it. And the two of you were sat down like chatting for a good hour and a half, almost 2 hours or so. And she goes, "Oh, and so that was it." And then she shouts over to our producer who's like sitting at the back of this veranda and goes, "We need to do more of these. I love this. I can talk for hours." And it was just that way where she's just kind of like, people want to put a microphone on me and ask me questions, I will talk.
Yeah, she's a great storyteller, and I really can't wait to share with you part 2 of her interview in a future episode because she's got such a rich story to tell.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was just a taster and really just to get us into this whole series and what it is about. Because our goal is to give you that complete history of Malaysia through food. We're going to take you back tens of thousands of years to the arrival of the first peoples of Malaysia. We're going to take you on a journey to the rise of Malacca, those great trading sultanates of the past. We're going to explore the arrival of the first Europeans to the land, the many waves of colonialism by Portuguese, Dutch, British forces, and we're going to make our way to independence and the dawn of a modern Malaysia. And we're going to tell this whole story through food. And we'll see how the food that we eat today connects us with Malaysia's past and its people. So in each episode, we're going to recap by looking at our food symbol of the day. And today was satay. It's a dish that I think feels so familiar because it's so ubiquitous around the world.
Right.
But as we look deeper, we can see that there's so much more to it, where it comes from, what it represents. And I think that is reflective of Malaysia. What is Malaysia? Where does it come from?
Yeah, I hope over the next couple of episodes, there are listeners are just as enthralled as we were making this. If you're new to the cuisine or if you are Malaysian yourself, I really do hope that the stories we tell and the history that we uncover really does kind of inspire you to go out and eat more than anything, and to reflect when you're eating on just how all those ingredients came to be so prominent.
Eating thoughtfully.
Eating thoughtfully.
So we hope you've enjoyed today's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in, and I can't thank you enough for starting this journey with us. And also a big thank you to the Golden Chopsticks Scholarship by the Oxford Cultural Collective. They've really supported this project and helped to get it off the ground. So I hope you join us for the next episode where we're going to take you back to where it all began, to the arrival of those first peoples tens of thousands of years ago. We are talking durian and the arrival of the first peoples. So don't miss our next episode of Satay.
Okay.